So this is the final audio of the pre-learning series for the Self-Hypnosis and Personal Alchemy workshop in London. And it is possibly the most important of the recordings, in that everything that we've covered so far has been developing skills, has been developing some certain understandings, and in a sense this is where it really starts to come together. This is about deconstructing and reconstructing the underpinning beliefs, the beliefs that underpin various trances. Now, all trances are underpinned by beliefs. But when we talk about beliefs, we're not talking about the things that most people think of as beliefs. Most people think beliefs are the expressions of beliefs. They mistake the map for the territory. So anytime we use words to utter or express a belief, those words are not the belief itself. The belief is something deeper. The belief is something pre-linguistic. So when I say when I express a belief like the sun will rise in the morning, those words, the sun will rise in the morning, are not the belief. The belief itself is a deeply held pre-linguistic thing. And as I attempt to bring it into consciousness, I render it up in this conceptual form as this set of words, this coding, the sun will rise in the morning. But that coding is not the belief itself. But it is what we have to work with. It is the method we have, and it is an imperfect method for bringing that belief into consciousness in such a way that we can start to work with it. Think of each of those words as sort of a lever attached to a deeper belief structure so we can start to work with it. So I'm always interested, whether I'm doing self-transformation or working with another person, in getting into the underpinnings of somebody's trance, the deep beliefs. When I work with clients, I will often not necessarily work with the kind of belief expressions, the conceptualized belief expressions that we're working with. I'll tend to work more with metaphorical expressions of the deeper underpinnings of the trance, rather than belief statement conceptualized expressions. But that's less easy to self-facilitate. So when it comes to self-facilitation, what I'm going to suggest here is that we work pretty much exclusively with conceptually organized belief statements, such things as the sun won't rise in the morning, though that's not likely to underpin a problem trance. Maybe something like people always let me down, or people are untrustworthy, or people will work you over if they can, or whatever it will be, or I'm not a likable person, or something like that, this kind of belief statement. So we discussed in the last audio around journaling up your trances, finding out what the trances are, being able to evaluate them. So you may have by now the beginnings of an appreciation of some of the trances that you want to change. What I'm going to offer you here is I'm going to offer you essentially a 5-step process. Let me just give you a quick overview of this. It's uncover the belief is step 1. Step 2 is be with the belief. Be with the belief. And not inside of the belief, being had by it, but being with it on an equal footing. So that's step 2. Step 3 is maneuver in relation to the belief in terms of spatial and temporal organization, space and time. Step 4 is build a bridge to a new belief. And step 5 is to immerse yourself, resonate deeply with the new belief in an as-if space. So we've got a deconstruction and a reconstruction within this 5-step process. So the first thing we want to do is we want to uncover the belief. Now, I say the belief. Trances will be built underneath of a trance. I mentioned before you could call this a complex. And a complex is a coming together of beliefs and values and understandings. So there's not going to be one belief that is the belief that underpins the trance. But there's often some big hitting beliefs that will come out, and you can shift one big hitting belief, one significant factor in the trance matrix, and the whole trance will shift. So when we want to change a trance, we're going to go for these kind of big hitting, impactful sorts of beliefs. We're going to shift those, and we see how much the trance shifts. If we need to go back into the trance and uncover something a little deeper, then we can do that as well. So our first step is uncovering the trance. If you've been journaling your trances, you might be able to pick one and go, this one. This is one that I want to change. Now there's a good chance that when you sit down to do some work with it, you're not actually inside of it in that moment. It's one that you've noted. Maybe you're looking through your journal and you picked it up and you said, yes, this is the one. So the first thing to do is to get back in touch with the trance. And to do this, you simply want to, you can close your eyes if you wish to, and you just go back to either the last time you remember this trance happening or the most significant memory of it that you have. The most significant memory of it that you have. And you go back, you close your eyes if you need to, you remember where you were, you remember who was around you, and you get back in touch with the feeling that was associated with it, any thoughts, any feelings that come up with it. And you don't have to go all the way back in. This isn't like a complete regression. You just want to get yourself back in touch with it to the point where you've got some sense of it within your body. And it's particularly useful to feel any sort of kinesthetic elements, any emotional elements, any felt sense elements. Because the next thing we want to do once we're in it is we want to do the felt sense maneuver, the Eugene Gendlin felt sense maneuver. We want to feel our way into it and ask ourselves, what is it that's happening here? And we want to allow beliefs to come through. So we can almost like speak from the feeling. And there's a number of ways you can do this. You can ask, what is it that I want right now? Now you might get something like, I want to run away, I want to escape. And if it is, I want to run away, I want to escape, you might say, so what is it that I fear? And it might be that people will laugh at me. So now you're starting to get into some belief material. You're believing that, number one, people might laugh at you, but there's clearly a belief under that that says people laughing at you is a bad thing and must not happen and should not happen. So why is it a bad thing? Why would people laughing at you be a bad thing? Well, because then they wouldn't think I was credible. Now, usually if you get to something like that, they wouldn't think I was credible. You're starting to touch on what's called a shallow element. There might be a fear underneath of it. Right underneath of the trance, the real fear is I am not credible. That's the deep belief. You see, because if somebody really believed that they were credible, I'm just using this as an example, by the way, but if somebody really believed that they were credible, they would never really fear that other people wouldn't think they were credible, because those other people would just be wrong, so what's the big deal? They're wrong and you're right, so what's the big deal? So usually, what I often say to people is at some level, when you're tracking down, keep tracking the beliefs down, do a bit of detective work, and follow the beliefs down until it touches your identity. Remember this idea that all trance is identity. When it gets down to something about your self-image, your self-concept, your identity, that's usually where the real leverage is. Beliefs that come in at that level. Even there's another type of belief which often causes a problem, which is should beliefs and ought beliefs and must beliefs, because they're arguments with reality. People should respect me. But even underneath of that, people should respect you. Well, why should they respect you? Because I deserve respect. And why do you deserve respect? Because, and underneath there's some belief of not being worthy of respect and therefore needing it. So there's an I am belief even under the shoulds. There's often an identity level belief. So if you can track down and get to identity level beliefs, I am, then you're usually hitting some real pay dirt around what you want to do to transform the trance. The two types of belief that I tend to find are most powerful is should, ought and must beliefs. The things that are couched in terms of what in NLP are called modal operators of necessity. I should have known better than to do that. I should be able to do this by now. And you see them hidden underneath things. Maybe somebody might express, why can't I get this right? They might exclaim, or maybe you're feeling you're into a trance and the thought comes up, why can't I get this right? Well, underneath of that is the rule that you should get it right. And if you don't get it right, it means something bad about you. And what is it that it means about you? So you can always track down to this identity. And a lot of the time, by the way, touching on the identity belief can be quite challenging and quite powerful, because people spend their time getting away from those identity beliefs. If somebody has an identity belief, I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough, they don't want to spend time getting in touch with that. They're trying to get away from it the whole time. So it can be quite, there can be psychological blocks to getting down to the identity belief. What is it that you fear is true about you? That all the behavior is about denying, escaping, protecting, stopping people from seeing, whatever. This is a real a piece that's at the heart of a lot of toxic trances. And I've talked about this before. It's literally, we process it as a threat. Anything we process as a threat to our sense of self is often as frightening or terrifying as something that we would process as a threat to our physical self. So I might not want to go into the cave of a bear because I fear the bear ripping me apart, but the fear I might feel there might be the same fear, same kind of fear I feel when I'm about to deliver a presentation in front of a group of colleagues, when underneath I fear that I might be revealed to be not good enough. Because the threat to the sense of self is treated the same and on a threat response level as the threat to the actual physical self, if that makes sense. So I've said this before elsewhere, when I've run various programs, particularly around social fear, that we process existential threats, like threats to the sense of self, in the same way we process threats to our physical self. So underneath there can be a real belief statement thing, and what we want to do is we want to uncover that. And the next thing we want to be able to do is step 2, is to be able to be with that belief. Because the belief itself is something we've been running from. So if I have a trance that is driven by a belief that, I don't know, maybe I am not lovable. I am not a lovable person. Let's say that's the painful belief that's underneath. What I want to be able to do is be with that belief without struggling against it, without fighting it, without judging myself for holding it, without any of that. Just to be able to be with it, breathe with it. Now, if you think about the stuff that we did on some of the later audios, the expanded sense of self, the elliptical breathing, if we can be with the belief and the sense of the belief and hold it within a field of expanded self and breathe with it, and recognize that the belief itself cannot hurt us. We may be acting as if it can, or acting as if it's true. By the way, one of the important things about being with the belief is recognizing that it is a belief, that what we're dealing with here is a belief that we have been responding to and responding from. And when we can see it as a belief and not a truth, this is the significant thing. If you keep being toggled inside, if you keep being had by the truth trap. So let me use this exemplar belief. I am an unlovable person. If I go, but actually it's true, then I'm back in what I would call the truth trap with it. Thinking that this is a statement of truth rather than a statement of belief. This is a significant thing. If you can get that there are no statements of truth, only statements of belief, you are way on your way to being free, being able to free yourself from any trance that you may hold. If you still believe that there are certain things that you can say about yourself, certain things you can say about the state of the world that absolutely are true, then the truth trap beckons. And the truth trap, being caught up in the truth of our thinking, is the very thing that keeps us embedded in inflexible trances. So we talked about this earlier on. I'm just retouching on this here. So we want to be able to be with the belief. Another thing I'll just quickly say about that. Sometimes I get people contact me who say, James, I need some help changing a limiting belief. And I say, but you don't need any help changing a limiting belief. And they say, no, I do. I said, well, if you know it's a belief, then why do you need to change it? If you really get the nature of it as a belief and not a fact, then you don't need to change it because you're not had by it. Do you see what I mean? So it's only when you believe it's true rather than believe it's a belief that you can be had by it. So this is another point about being with the belief, is identifying it as a belief, seeing it as a belief, and being able to be with it. So you can open up this field of being, and you can either hold the belief inside of it, or there's a few other maneuvers you can do. You can take the whole complex and treat it as an aspect of self and say, I see you and I acknowledge you. I see you and I acknowledge you. And you are believing that I am not lovable. You are believing that you are not lovable. So you can kind of separate off. You see that this is what I said about the steps. They're simplistic, and when you start seeing the choices within them, the steps don't necessarily follow one after the other. So I'm starting to move into the third step, which is maneuver in relation to. Or you can hold the belief and you can shift it. You can go into the I am unlovable and feel what it's like to be inside of it, and then step out and say, when I'm in this trance, when I'm in that trance, I am believing I am unlovable. I am thinking I am unlovable. It is the belief that I am unlovable that is driving this trance. So that can help you be with it, and also bringing some kind of understanding, some breathing, starting to see this is a belief. This is a belief. What is everything else that I am that goes beyond the concept of unlovable? And now we're getting to stage 3, maneuvering in relation to it. So what we want to do, once we can hold the belief in a field, breathe with the belief, be with the belief, take a moment to see the belief for what it is. It's a belief, it's an idea, it's a thought. It is a map, it is not the territory. And it is the thing that has been created in our experience. Once we are able to just be with that for a bit, we want to start maneuvering in relation to it. Maneuvering in relation to it. Actually, let me just back up for a second and say something else about being with the belief. One of the most powerful things that you can do to be with a belief and transform a belief and maneuver in relation to it is the tetralemma process. And this is something, I have a video on this, the tetralemma, and many people listening to this may have already, studied the tetralemma program. And I don't want to skip by without saying how powerful it is as a process of running the charge off the beliefs that underpin trances. It is phenomenally powerful because it busts out the either or logic of true and false. It completely busts it out. And at the same time facilitates a being with the belief in such a way that engenders a flexibility and a freedom from the belief. It's a very, very powerful process. And that may come back up again. I may mention that again. So that's the tetralemma process, which I think a lot of people, due to the way that I put that out in the world, didn't get really what that was about. I was really anti-marketing at the time and thought I'd just sort of float it out there and see who went for it. But going on the title, the tetralemma, people probably didn't really get what that was about. But it's a phenomenally powerful process for doing this kind of work. So step 3, maneuver in relation to the belief. Now, and I've got in this about time and space. These are the dimensions in which we're going to maneuver in relation to the belief. If you consider that when you're in a trance, that seems like the totality of everything, but you're not always like that. You're not always doing that. You're not always doing the same trance. You toggle in and out of different trances. Some people think they're always doing the same trance. They think they're caught in a trance. When they're inside of it, it seems like that's the totality of their life. I worked with somebody a little while ago who said that they were depressed. They told me they were depressed. And I said, so when you're not, he said, I'm always depressed. Always depressed. It's always there. Depression is always there. It's my life. I thought, that's interesting. I said, so what kinds of things, aside from that, what kinds of things do you actually enjoy doing in life? He said, I enjoy my work. I enjoy my work. I love being at work. The people I work with, they love me. You know, the juniors there, and I help them out, and they absolutely love me. And I said, is there anything else about your work you enjoy? And he said, oh, yes, I enjoy doing this, and I enjoy doing that. He was a medical practitioner. And when he was telling me about what he enjoyed, I could see him lighting up. I could see his face lighting up. I thought that's an interesting thing, because he's just told me there is never a moment when he's not depressed, but now he's telling me that there are times when he enjoys things. And I said, so when you're enjoying yourself doing these things, whereabouts is depression? Remember I said moving in time and space. Whereabouts? When you are enjoying yourself, time, whereabouts is depression? And he looked and he said, well, it's still there, but it's just in the background. And I'm not really paying attention to it, so I'm not noticing it. So he's telling me where it is, in the background. This is space again. And I said to him, so when you're not paying attention to it and you're enjoying yourself, how do you know it's still in the background if you're not paying any attention to it? He said, well, I know it must be in the background because it always comes back. So he has an organization of reality where he believes the true him, the transcendent him, is depression, is this depressed trance, this depressing trance. And even though the trance will go and he will be out of that trance in a different trance, his organization of reality is, oh, actually that trance is the true me. You remember this thing about trances and identities? He's really identified with the depression trance, but he's not really identifying so much in an overarching way with the enjoyment trance that he has when he's doing various things at work. So I said to him, I'd like you to consider a possibility. I'd like you to consider that when you're not noticing it, that it's not because it's gone into the background, it's simply because it's not there. And you're in a completely different experience. And the experience in the trance of depression has gone. It is not there. And it continues to be not there until you recreate it through the beliefs and the thinking that run that trance. But that when it's not there, it's actually gone. And he looked and thought. And then suddenly he leapt forward and shook my hand vigorously. Because it hadn't occurred to him before. He had an organization of reality whereby even in a position where he was reflecting in his meta trance, his trance about all his trances, he was picking that particular trance out and making it a distinct part of his personality, his self-image, whereas other trances that contradicted it, he was excluding from his overarching self-image, from his transcendent self, so to speak. So time and space maneuvers can be extremely useful because it helps you remember that it is a trance. Because while you persist across time and you can move about in space, trances tend to be located in time and in space. They are more time and space bound. So if you have a trance that has underneath it and you identify, I am unlovable, for example, what you might want to do is recognize and say, yes, when I'm experiencing this trance, I am believing the belief I am unlovable. And believing the belief that I am unlovable feels a particular way. But where is everywhere else in my life where I'm not believing that belief? Where is everywhere else in my life that I'm already beyond that belief? Where is everywhere else that I am not doing that belief? So you've got where, that's space. Where? Where am I not believing that? Where am I believing something entirely different? Or where is it just not relevant? So that's a space maneuver. You can also say, and when? When is it that I don't believe this? When is it that I'm not connecting to this? When is it that I'm not being had by this? When is it that I'm connecting with some of who I am that goes beyond this already? So you've got where and when. And this is a useful thing because it helps to shift you in relationship to it. Here's another way you can do this. So let's say when the person's in the trance, when you're in the trance, you might be believing I am an unlovable person. And then you say, sometimes I am believing that I am an unlovable person. Or there are times when I am believing that I'm an unlovable person. Now, do you see what we're doing here? We're owning it as a belief, I am believing, but now we're maneuvering in relation to it in terms of space. Sometimes I am believing that I am an unlovable person. You could do sometimes I am that I am believing I'm an unlovable person. Why would I put that double I am in? Because it's recognizing and acknowledging that trances are identities. So it's recognizing, acknowledging and pasting the identity quality of the trance. It can be a powerful thing. Play with it, tune into felt sense. Sometimes I am that I am believing that I am not lovable. There have been times when I have believed. Now we've got a real tense shift. There has been times when I have believed that I am unlovable. This is all, it's like a double dissociation into the past. And it frees you up to be fluid in time and opens up a future where this trance doesn't run anymore. So by beginning to maneuver in relation to this, there are places, space, where I have been believing, time, that I was not a lovable person. So now you're moving in time and space to dissociate from the trance and open up everywhere else and every other time and every time that is to come where you can experience difference. And this is encoding in. Now the more you maneuver in relation to it, this is like walking around the roller coaster, so to speak, rather than riding the roller coaster. So the more you can maneuver in relation with these sorts of things, verb tenses and spatial stuff like predicates and sort of locational pronouns and this kind of thing. If there's such a thing as a locational pronoun, I might be making that up. So that's what you want to do at step 3, is maneuver in relation to it. All the time noticing felt sense shifts. You remember the point I made before about when you use language to facilitate yourself, remain connected to that language and the shifts that language can create, rather than just trying to mindlessly chuck out linguistic mantras and this kind of thing. So you want to really notice the shifts taking place, and this really starts to loosen the trances off. So the next thing we want to do is build a bridge to a new belief. Now, what I mean by this is, if somebody uncovers a belief, I am not a lovable person, and they go, oh right, so that's the belief I've been running, so all I need to do now is replace it with a new belief, I'm a lovable person. And they go to create an affirmation. I am a lovable person, I am a lovable person. And that they, by sheer force of repetition, they may try and drive a new belief through. But those words do not a new belief make. What they can often make is an attempt to persuade oneself, which is not what we want to do. There should never be any attempt to persuade yourself of anything. You are exploring difference, not trying to persuade yourself of new facts. Okay, if you try and persuade yourself of new facts, you're actually back in the truth trap again, which is the very thing that keeps trances in place. And this is the mistake people make with affirmations. They're arguing with themselves about what is or isn't so, rather than taking charge of their meaning making. And this is what we want to do. We never want to argue with ourselves about what is or isn't so. We want to recognize that all of these alleged facts about what is or isn't so are simply beliefs, ideas, thoughts, ways of trying to make sense of the world. They are not the world itself. So when we step away from that, we stop arguing with ourselves about what is or isn't so and start taking charge of our meaning making. And this is the real place of power when it comes to personal alchemy, taking charge of your meaning making. This is what the Stoics were talking about when they say the only places we have power is with our choices and with our conceptions, how we conceive of things. They're talking about taking charge of your meaning making, and to do this you must see meaning making for what it is. Meaning making, not statements about fact. So let go of arguing about what is or isn't so and start taking charge of your meaning making. So what we want to do is if the new belief that we put in place, if we find a sort of visceral resistance, and you might not, you might just go, I am a lovable person, and find that you can connect into that belief very easily. But it might also be that you get a resistance come up. A friend of mine was saying that he'd read a book, and I wish I could give you the reference to this book. He said, and the author of this book called these blurts. If you create a new belief statement, watch out for blurts, which are little feelings, and they may come up in terms of an internal dialogue or just a felt sense that says, no, you're not, or no, that's not true, or denies it. If you get a blurt come up, if you say, you know, I'm a lovable and likable human being, and you get a feeling that says, no, you're not, that's a blurt. Now, the thing I say about these blurts is they are a good sign that you are in the zone of arguing about what is or isn't so. It's a good sign that you're still connected to the belief as a fact rather than seeing it as a belief. However, that's fair enough, because the point about beliefs is to sucker us into thinking they're facts. You know, this is why beliefs are only powerful when they masquerade as facts, so to speak. So our belief system is designed to pull us in so that we can use that map to really navigate the territory effectively. If we didn't really believe our map, we wouldn't be able to use it to navigate our territory. So that's the point of beliefs, is to pull us in. So what we sometimes want to do to avoid this arguing about what is or isn't so with ourselves is to build a bridge to the new belief. Now, let's say the belief is I'm not a lovable person. Let's stick with this example. Instead of, if you look deeper into the structure of that belief, you'll find that there is a binary quality to it. There's quite a blocky rendering to it, in that there's two categories of people implied by this: lovable people and not lovable people. And this is rendered up at the identity level. So you either are lovable or you are not lovable. So what we want to do is we want to start changing the organization of this and step away from lovable as an identity statement and start looking at lovable and lovability as a descriptive element, as a quality that is possessed rather than as a thing that you are. So we shift it from identity to a quality. And then the next thing we do is we take it out of a binary category and put it into a quantitative category. So the only question is about lovability. Once we turn it into a quality, the question becomes about how much of it. How much of it there is. Now, if you take, let's pick something like intelligence. Let's say somebody had a belief that said, I'm not an intelligent person. And that was their deep underpinning belief. Or I'm not as intelligent as I should be, or whatever. Or I'm not an intelligent person. And they want to take intelligent person out, and they want to turn intelligence into a quality. And then they want to start looking at how much they have. Now, the fact of the matter is everybody has a measure of intelligence. Everybody has a measure of intelligence. Every creature on the planet has a measure of intelligence. Even plants, even algae have a measure of intelligence. There's starting to be evidence coming out that some really simple life forms that don't even have any neurons are apparently able to learn in simple ways. There's a kind of intelligence there. There's an intelligence to everything. There's an intelligence to the unfolding of the universe in a certain way. So everybody has intelligence. The real question is, well, how much? But maybe there are other variables as well, not just how much intelligence do you have, but how much are you connecting to the intelligence that you have? How much are you utilizing the intelligence that you have? How much are you nurturing the intelligence that you have so that it can grow? How much are you learning more about your own intelligence and how to intelligently apply it? You see, so what you end up doing is when you turn it into a quality, you open up a whole array of relational choices with this quality. And this can give us a whole range of pathways through to a new belief. So I'll give you an actual story, a personal story about this. I spent many years, this may be unsurprising to you, studying influence, studying linguistic influence, psychological influence, looking at influence from a variety of different perspectives through NLP, through hypnosis, through broader psychology, all manner of things. I had a fascination with influence. And I never really reflected much upon my fascination for influence, for learning influence, but there was something driving it, obviously. I never really thought about it. I just had a fascination. I got on with learning influence. Now, after studying influence for years and years and years, and I got into teaching hypnosis, and hypnosis without trance did quite well. So I had an opportunity to start running workshops on influence. People were interested and I had the opportunity to do it. And I wasn't doing it for some reason. I wasn't doing any workshops on influence. I was hanging back from doing it. Every time I thought about it, I would procrastinate. I wouldn't do it. So I'd get this sort of procrastination trance come up about doing workshops around influence. So I decided that I would explore this trance. So I sort of took some time with it. I got into step one and I used felt sense to feel my way into it, and ask, what could this be about? And what came out for me was that I did not believe that I was an influential person. I didn't believe that I was an influential person. So that underneath of it, I had this trance that I could connect with a lot, which was driven by, I am not influential. I am not powerful. I'm not a powerful person. The world is powerful. I am not. And I recognized that, funnily enough, this whole trance was the trance that drove me to learn about influence. Because unconsciously I believed that I was not powerful, I was not influential. So I went for a classic outside-in solution, building influence skills. But what never happened was an update to the aspects of self-image that ran that trance. And it's worth mentioning here that the way beliefs work is they work in conjunction with something called confirmation bias. So once we've largely built our model of the world, we then start to look for evidence that supports our model of the world. Once we believe things, we filter for evidence that supports those beliefs and we dismiss evidence that would counter them. So what happens if you never do any work to transform your trances or the beliefs that underpin them consciously? Confirmation bias will take care of keeping the trance just the same, even if you radically change something about who you are, your capacities, your skills. If you don't think you're capable of something and you take action at the skills level to fix that capability, it does not automatically upgrade the self-image that underpins it. So this is what happened for me. I learned all these skills and in many ways became considerably more influential, although my belief that I was not an influential or powerful person still undermined my capacity to utilize those skills in the real world, and certainly was undermining my capacity to teach them. So once I understood this, I could see it as a belief. I could be with it as a belief. Step two. And at the time, I didn't do the stuff around step three. I hadn't kind of connected into the utility of those methods. So I did step one and step two of our process. So I uncovered the belief. I took some time to be with the belief, to see it and acknowledge it as a belief. I didn't do step three maneuver in relation to it in terms of space and time. But I went straight to step four, a bridge to a new belief. Because if I'd have just started trying to tell myself, I am an influential human being, I am an influential human being, I would have got blurts come up. It would have been a step too far. I wasn't ready to go to that space yet. So I took that out of an identity quality, I am influential, a thing that I am, and turned it into something that I could possess, influentiality. And I considered that influentiality is a quality that everybody possesses. Just like intelligence is a quality that everybody possesses. Likability, if you want to have an essentialist view of it, is a quality that everybody possesses to some degree or another. Even the most unlikable person, there are some people who find them okay, even just briefly for a few moments. You know, there's nobody who is objectively unlikable. So everybody has a likability. Everybody can soften themselves, smile, and get a smile back. Everyone can relax. Everyone has the capacity, the potential, the possibility to relax and have another person relax too. And you can call that likability. So you want to get a refined quality that you can connect with and you can recognize as being universal to some degree. So this is taking a glass half full, or even a glass quarter full, or even a glass 1/100th full. But you want to turn the quality into something that you can absolutely see and acknowledge. Yeah, everybody has intelligence. Everybody has influentiality. You cannot not influence. And depending on your rendering of liking as well, it's going to go in that direction, because how could you influence somebody in a positive way without them liking you in some way? People will argue with that. I'm even arguing with that myself. So clearly I got some truth trap stuff going on around that. So what you want to do is build this bridge to this new belief. And here's how I did it with influentiality. I asked myself the question, am I ready to connect with the influentiality that I already have? Am I ready to connect with the influentiality that I already have? And you can use this bridging maneuver with anything. Am I ready to connect more deeply with the intelligence that I already have, with the levels of intelligence that I already have? Or if it was likability, am I ready to connect with the seeds of likability that I already possess? Okay, so that's another way of doing it. Even if you think you really don't have much of a quality, except as a human being, if it's a human thing, you have the seeds of it at least. Am I ready to connect with the seeds of this quality? And if the answer to that is yes, any of those versions, and am I ready to connect with, what you want to get is a yes, and you want to get what I call a clear and congruent yes. If it's a hesitant yes, there's something else going on there. It might be truth trap again. It might be going, yeah, but I don't really believe I have any of that quality or the seed of that quality. And then you're actually back into a truth trap argument. So if you find that and you flag that up and go, yeah, I think I'm dealing with truth here again, then you're back into arguing about what is or isn't so rather than taking charge of your meaning making. You may need to backtrack and really get back into the idea, meditate on the idea that whatever you think something is, you are wrong. Because the thing you're trying to understand is not a bunch of words or a bunch of thoughts. Do you see what I mean? So the truth of the matter is likability doesn't exist. Intelligence doesn't exist. They're all simplistic concepts to make sense of something which is infinitely more complex than it's rendered up to be. Things are not only more complex than you think, they are more complex than you can think. So if you find yourself back in the truth trap, back into arguing about what is or isn't so, it's time to step back a level. Again, this is where the tetralemma is good. The tetralemma, well facilitated, is powerful in this respect. So you want to build this bridge, this new belief. Once you've got the clear and congruent yes, I am ready to connect with the influentiality that already exists within me. I'm ready to connect with the seeds of intelligence that are growing now within me. And listen, because we're getting into suggestion structures now. These are suggestion structures, because if I say I'm willing to connect with the seed of intelligence that is growing within me, this is a suggestion structure which is just set up a dynamic pathway of growth. And if I get a clear and congruent yes to this, I buy in to the rendering. And I'm starting to open up the new trance. The new trance is opening up. And that's what I want to check in, the buy-in. Yes, I'm willing. So I did this with influentiality. Am I willing to connect with the influentiality that is within me? Am I willing to connect with the influentiality that I already have? Connect more deeply. So the answer is yes. Once I've got that clear and congruent yes, I can now move to another belief statement, which can be an I am. Because I'm willing to do it, I'm making a commitment to do it, and I can say, I am connecting to the influentiality that is within me, or at least I am open to connecting. I am open to connecting. I am seeking to connect to the influentiality that is within me. And you run through these different statements that start opening you up to it. Now, the next thing here, as part of building a bridge to a new reality, is understanding this point about confirmation bias. What confirmation bias does is unconsciously seeks evidence that support existing beliefs and discounts any evidence that could overturn existing beliefs. You have to understand here, you don't have to, there's no rule in the universe that says you must, but what it serves to understand here, if you wish to transform the trance, is that you can consciously take charge of this, your evidence gathering, your evidence sorting. So once you accept you're looking for this quality within yourself, you start to look for evidence for the quality. Whether it's influentiality, whether it's intelligence, whether it's likability, whatever the quality is, you look for evidence for it. And here's the recommendation here, is you take all evidence, big or small. You count every piece of evidence, however tiny. However tiny, you take it as evidence for the quality that you're growing. So with regard to influentiality, what I did is once I'd got that bridging suggestion, I'm willing to connect to the growing influentiality within me. I would scan for evidence of where I influenced people. So what I would do is every time I got a smile from somebody in a shop, I would go, yep, I influenced that person. Every time I asked for something and got what I wanted, I took that as evidence that I influenced the person. Every time I worked with a client and helped them make a shift, I made sure I consciously noted the evidence that I influenced. So this was the thing, always claiming the evidence. What I found, I learned a lot from this process. I've done it a lot since, but this is the first time I really used this bridging method. What I found from this is not only did I gather evidence of being more influential, I also unconsciously started seeking out opportunities to explore with influentiality. So I started actually doing more influencing, more conscious influencing, more deliberate influencing. And the same is true. You seek out opportunities to explore the new quality, whatever it is you're bringing into your life, not just gather evidence. So this is a useful thing. And what you're ultimately doing is you're shifting yourself, and at some point you might find you toggle across to go, yeah, I am an influential person, or I am an intelligent person. I do have intelligence, so therefore I am an intelligent person, and I can grow this intelligence more and more and enjoy it more and more. So that's one method. By the way, again, mentioning the tetralemma again, the tetralemma doesn't really use this bridging method as a thing out in the world, but it kind of includes elements of it within the actual process itself. It moves very rapidly to playing with new belief statements, but it will move through bridging elements as well, but not in the same way that you're actually going out and living it in the world and gathering evidence. But you can use the tetralemma process in conjunction with this process where you gather evidence in the world as well. So that's step 4, build a bridge to a new belief. Step 5 is actually just try on the new beliefs and resonate with them. Now, this is a powerful thing, and you can do this without doing any of the rest, providing you don't get caught in the truth trap, providing you don't get caught with arguing about what is or isn't so. So I could forget all those other nuanced bits. They're all choices and they're all tools. I could uncover a belief. I could go, what's happening here is I'm believing that I'm not an influential person. I'm not connecting with my influentiality. See, I'm already changing the belief with that statement. But I could go, okay, so what's the opposite belief? The opposite belief is I am an influential person. So I could jump across all the rest of the steps, providing I've got the skill to do it and I'm not going to argue about what is or isn't so, and I'm not going to be had by the blurts that come up. And I could go with the opposite of that, is I am an influential person. So then the trick becomes to stand in the belief, I am an influential person, to bathe in the belief, to wear it, to feel one's body, believe it fully and completely. Perhaps to see oneself and one's mind influencing, absolutely congruently without argument. Now here's the thing. If you can stay in the realm of absolute fantasy, if you can accept this and you can go, this is a game I'm playing here. This is a neurological game. This is a meaning-making game. This is a game, this is an exploration. If you can keep any kind of hooks into truth offline, this can be a profoundly powerful thing to do. People who use affirmations, they often just repeat the words, or they use the affirmation to try and convince themselves. If they use the affirmation as a way of vivifying an experienced reality in the moment, then it will be a considerably more powerful thing. Now, to give you a sense of what I'm talking about here, think about method acting. The idea behind method acting, the Stanislavski method, is that you fully become the character. You immerse yourself in how it would be to be that character, and you play act it. You act as if you pretend fully and completely that you are. We all have the capacity to do this because kids do it all the time. They pretend fully and completely. When I was a kid, I pretended fully and completely that I was Luke Skywalker. Now, as an adult, if I tried to do that, well, I'm more sensible. So I might go, well, of course you're not Luke Skywalker. How ridiculous. Because I get caught by the truth trap. But this ability to absolutely out and out pretend, to as if it, to feel it, to quote the Matrix, the oracle in the Matrix, to know it balls to bone, to feel it completely, immerse yourself in that reality. It's a game. This is one of the most powerful self-hypnosis things you can do. And you don't want to get needy about it. You don't want to think, oh, has it worked afterwards? It's not about that. It's not about that. It's just spending time enjoying being with a different experience. So another option I could have done instead of the bridging belief is just to go straight to, I'm an influential human being. I am an influential human being. And then go, how do I know? And build the evidence in my mind. Is see myself going into situations, see myself influencing people. Feel how it is to be influenced by people. Experience myself speaking to those people. Imagine their responses as I perfectly influence them. So long as I stay out of the realm of, as long as I keep my critical faculty offline, that's going to go, oh, but this isn't real, it's just imagination. Or, oh yes, but. You see, as soon as that aspect of self comes in, you're screwed with this. So you can't do it. And this is why bridging is a useful thing, by the way, because it can help you sort of move into this zone gradually. And it can help you use your critical faculty to build a bridge across, which keeps your critical faculty from jumping in and smashing up the new reality that you want to step into. But if you get adept across time, if you spend your time being able to immerse yourself in these psychological simulations, these neurological simulations, you'll rapidly build new trances in life. It's absolutely true. You'll rapidly build new trances. There's all sorts of studies being done. There's the piano study where they have people imagine playing piano scales, and it massively increases their capacity to play those scales almost as much as really practicing them. There's a study done with shooting basketballs as well, where they have basketball players mentally rehearse shooting the basketballs versus the players who actually do. And the ones who mentally do it make almost equivalent gains to those who actually do it. The caveat here, by the way, in something like basketball is you need to actually have some skill to start with. But yeah, so mental rehearsal of things, there's a huge amount of power inside of that. If you can fully do it, if you can immerse yourself in it and do it full out without having your critical faculty jump on board and get in the way. But if you do, then we want to use the critical faculty, and that's where the bridging thing comes in. So these are the steps. So you end up with a new resonant belief that you connect with a felt sense, with a visualization, with everything. Use all of your senses. You can do this with you can do this with stock, what are they called? Affirmations as well. So take an affirmation. Here's an affirmation I like. It's not one of my own creation, it's a stock one. I'll give you two. I'll give you one of my own creation, which is personally tailored for me. And I'll give you one which I borrowed, which I really quite like. So the one I borrowed is the affirmation, I go beyond your fears and limitations. I create my life. Now, if you take that as just a set of words, you can say them, I go beyond my fears and limitations, I create my life. And you can either do it mindlessly, which isn't really going to help, or you can try and engage with it, maybe your critical faculty will argue, or you can do it full out, you can own it, you can state it with power and with purpose. And then you can perceive how it is to be beyond the fears and limitations that may be laid upon you by society. It'll be at the center of your own power, creating your life. How does it feel when you're creating your life? How do you look when you're creating your life? How do you engage with the world out there when you are creating your life? And you get all of this in your system. I go beyond my fears and limitations. I go beyond your fears and limitations. I create my life. And you go fully into the experience of it. And that's the way to do affirmations. One I created for myself is, I am the Zen calm at the center of the storm. This was a huge piece of personal alchemy for me, a huge reorientating statement. I sometimes call these unshakable truths, because I've talked about the truth trap, but actually when you install a new belief, you do want to take it as a truth, and you want to take it as an unshakable truth. So that was a very personal metaphor and a very personal one for me that was constructed. I am the Zen calm at the center of the storm. Because this is to do with seeing the world as full of unpredictable events that I used to feel threatened by, like I would be swept away by it, swept up in the storm of life. So I changed my internal organization to one where, how is it to be the Zen calm? Particular calm, to be grounded. Whatever craziness is going on in the world, whatever chaos is going on in the world, I can be grounded at the center of that. So the statement, the unshakable truth, the new belief, because we're talking about deconstructing beliefs, reconstructing them. The final reconstructed belief you want to build as an unshakable truth. And I took this mantra with me and I stood in it and felt the power of it. I am the Zen calm at the center of the storm. I am the Zen calm at the center of the storm. Not to persuade myself. I didn't need to repeat the words, just say them once and feel the experience of it. Run the scenario of it. What does that mean? And then also, take it back and look for those places where I'm being the Zen calm, where the storm is going off and I am the Zen calm. So there's a very personal one, and we're going to look at these kinds of things on the live workshop, building for you personally new statements of belief, unshakable truths. And what I'm hoping is that everybody's going to get a little bit of journaling done, at least, before the workshop. So we've got some personal material that people can work on. People have identified some trances and we can look at them and have some actual material to work with and look at the process of transforming those trances. And we're going to look at some additional skills and practices as well. But we want, so you can take those away and work with yourself. We also want to get some stuff happening in the room where we can start actually reshaping some real trances that people bring onto the live workshop. Okay, so once again, this is the final audio here for the pre-learning materials, and what I would say again is, if you have any questions come up, please do make use of the comments section here, or write them down in your journal, bring them to the live event. The questions, please, I really do want your questions to be answered. I don't want you to have any questions that go unaddressed or unanswered, so please do note them down somewhere or ask them outright on the comments section. Okay, so until we meet later in August, take very good care.